4 long days, but finally we arrive. If purgatory exists, it's right now. It's Judgment Day, and we start things off with Immunity. The Australians trying to get back into their second consecutive major, but they'll have to avenge the defeat that they sustained on day one to Dignitas, who come in here slightly as the favorite, oddly enough. That's due to the fact that there are no more regional qualifiers. So the Australians, both teams, in fact, have to fight through on Saturday. Welcome, everybody, to the spiritual home of Counter-Strike. We're live in Stockholm, and alongside myself, Sadokis, we've got Yanko, Daniel, and of course, Yona on the end. Two very experienced players and a handsome gentleman that we just happened to find in London. But, guys, we've had an incredible 4 days. We've seen some really cool storylines. The Vietnamese team last night brought a lot of excitement to the community. I can't wait to see more from them. We've also seen some interesting storylines as well. Winter Fox looking a little better, but going out. Liquid actually beating Renegades on day one. They've been a little emotionally detached ever since the London defeat. But for you guys, I'll start with you, Yanko. What are we looking back? What was your most impressive, I guess, storyline, and what are we looking forward to today?
Well, for me personally, the most impressive storyline was Skyred, because they completely surprised me, and I think they surprised everyone with their performance. Last night they were really close to maybe taking it to a third map against Vexed, and it's not just that, it's the energy they had, you know. Even after they lost, going back, they were like so humble, they were laughing about it, you know, that they realized that this is just an amazing experience for them. But looking back at the results, I think that it was like what pretty much everyone expected. All the favorites have gone through, and now it's between these 8 teams to battle for the remaining 4 spots.
Just quickly as well, I'll get to you guys. I know I want to get all the thoughts. We're going to look just through the groups, so everyone at home, they didn't catch the action this weekend. They must have been living under a rock. But we'll start with Group A. This is where we began on Tuesday. It seems like forever ago, just because there's been so much action. It was Cloud9 who came into this group as the favorites. They started things off against the Finnish team, Mixcats, as they were formerly known, now Team Rocket, but ultimately inexperienced as a roster. Put up some very good individual skill, but they bowed out of the event without picking up a single map, unfortunately. That's misspelled, by the way. That's Group A, just to be clear. But Immunity, they move on today to fight for their lives against Team Dignitas. And again, they come into this slightly on the back foot. We'll talk more about that match as we get into it. We'll move forward as well. We'll look at every single group here. So Group B, the real Group B, should pop up on the screen. I'm going to make sure that it does. But it is, again, a rematch. This is the thing. All 4 matches today are rematches. Dignitas did beat Immunity on day 1. Liquid beat Renegades. Copenhagen Wolves, they'll get a chance for revenge, as did Vexed. But I guess before those graphics show up, we'll go to Dan. Your thoughts on the week?
Well, going to your question, I mean, Skyred, this is all Skyred. I mean, the thing is about this is that we're all massive fans of Counter-Strike. And so the reason why that game was so incredibly important to all of us, and I think really touched everyone here, is that we don't really get to see Southeast Asian Counter-Strike. And the scene there is definitely much less developed. But we saw that they have a lot to deliver. And I think just the anticipation of maybe what we can see, you know, if we get players that good, teams that good, if they just get some more practice, maybe even some boot camps and maybe team houses in a region like Europe or North America, we're going to see a lot more amazing Counter-Strike, and that's something for all of us to be excited about.
And this is it here, so we'll talk a little bit about this, Yona. Group B in particular. Titan made it out. They lost the first map in that winner's match to Hellraisers, in fact, quite convincingly. We weren't sure how Scream was going to come into the roster, and he turns out doing so. And of course, this group was actually played yesterday, even though it is Group B, and that was just rescheduled due to the fact that Skyred, who didn't actually even qualify for the event, needed time to travel based on key use issues and ultimately had to bow out.
And actually, there's a mistake here as well. Skyred actually lost to Vexed 2-0, so Hellraisers are playing Vexed and not Skyred in the decider match. There was a little bit of a mistake with the graphic. Yeah.
But yeah, generally speaking, this week, I think Liquid needs some recognition as well, considering I think they've improved a lot. The way they were playing was very impressive to me. Individuals rising to the occasion, such as Nitro, for example, Hiko, obviously. And we were discussing how his presence is making it a lot easier for his teammates to play better as well. He's always going to have that guy there behind you who's going to be able to win those rounds that are maybe not in your favor even. And just the way they're executing, the way they're playing together, there's a really good rhythm in everything they do. I think they do have a great chance of beating Renegades today.
Well, that's the thing, right? Renegades have been really emotionally unstable, even when they win. Compare it to the I guess, mentality of Skyred, who even after losing last night were super thrilled with their performance, went back to the hotel. I guess Mark, who is one of the organizers here at DreamHack, was saying they were thankful to be here and they were really happy despite losing and just really thankful for the opportunity. Whereas Renegades, who managed to fight for their survival and make it into this deciding match, even though they won that, were still completely demoralized. Like, just...
I mean, it's their expectations are so high right now. You know,
Yeah.
they've shown the world they can beat teams like Fnatic. They've beat NIP. Okay, one map each, but still, they've shown that potential. So they expect better from themselves. So it is just that they expect themselves to be beating teams like that they lost to, basically.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll bring up the graphic as well, just for that group while we talk a little bit more about it. But as you mentioned, Liquid, they came out very well. It says Mouse Sports beat them 2-0 in the deciding match. That was ultimately true. They were the better team, but they didn't start that way in the morning. Their 2-0 win over Winterfox wasn't as clean and easy as they would have liked. I know Chris J said himself that he wasn't overly thrilled with their performance in that, but Chris J himself, speaking of the man, was very, very good in that winner's bracket match. Renegades, they lost 2-1 to Liquid, but ultimately did prevail over Winterfox. So another rematch, as I said, all four are...
Maybe it was a hashtag new Chris J.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got new Simple. We might have new Chris J. That, of course, leaves us with one group left to talk about. It is actually Group D, which we saw on the second day, out of order again due to that Skyred reschedule. Here it is here. We'll bring up the graphic first. CLG prevailed. So it was two American teams in a row, Cloud9 and CLG on day 1 and 2 that went through. Flip side, they've got to play today on a rematch against the Copenhagen Wolves. And Copenhagen, they ultimately lost 2-0 the first time they played. So we'll see if having that 2-day break or 3-day break before today has given them time to address those issues.
I feel that the story of this qualifier so far has been that teams have been showing two sides, especially flip side. When we look back at this particular group, they were amazing in their first match against Copenhagen Wolves. They only gave them 2 rounds as on their city side. And in their second match, they seemed off. They weren't as coordinated or anything. So I think that's going to be the storyline for today. Which side of the teams are we going to see? Are we going to see the brilliant side, or are we going to see the, not so brilliant side? And as well, when it comes to, as you already mentioned, it's all rematches, so it's going to be interesting to see how these teams approach it. Are they going to change their map veto? Are they going to throw a curveball maybe, especially the teams that lost? Maybe they feel that they need to change the veto process from their side in order to have a better chance. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it goes.
I think when you're the losing team, you maybe even want to play the same maps. When you're the winning team, you don't. Because the losing team is always going to go back and think about the little things they can fix that can change the rounds in their favor.
Yeah, a vivisection of the match. They'll definitely review demos. The other aspect that comes into it is two things. One is the first match, Dignitas and Immunity, that was on Tuesday, so they've had lots of time in Immunity's case to sit back, review that, and perhaps address specific issues, whereas Vexed and Hellraisers played yesterday. They come right back into it. They don't get that same opportunity, and whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is up for debate. But the other one that I'm most looking forward to is really finding out how this new patch plays out. We saw a lot of really T-sided games throughout the week. We even saw Renegades, who have been struggling severely. When the patch was released, they were actually in flight from Australia to London. We saw them switch from all A4s on the first game of the day when they lost to Liquid to back to 3 people using the A1. And whether that's a mental state or not, Sponge seems to think it was part of the success they've had on their CT sides. And you also mentioned Copenhagen Wolves on their first game only picked up 2 CT sides on 2 maps, but then looked ultimately better in the next map as well. So is that going to be a factor moving forward?
I think the teams are still adjusting to the situation, and maybe people have made too drastic opinions out of the silence them for. Maybe it's better than people really think it is in situations, because we've seen a lot of good plays with it. It's
definitely unfortunate for these players that they had so little time to actually try it out, or that they are basically the first ones playing a tournament on this new patch, so they have no information from other teams or other players. And maybe, as you pointed out, I think that's exactly the case. They probably overreacted to the patch because, okay, maybe even if like the A4 is objectively better now, you still need time to get good with it. It's a different type of spray patterns, recoil control. So I think players should maybe stay with the A1S.
Give it a bit of time.
Yeah. The thing as well with Immunity is that they actually got on a plane just as the patch hit, so they actually didn't get to play it at all really before coming to this tournament. There was, one night or so of just messing around with it before they played their game, because they played on the first day, so they didn't get any real preparation with the new patch. And so there's that kind of playing in their favor, because they played first, so they've had quite a few days to actually figure out the matchup that's coming up against Dignitas, and also how does this patch actually play out? So,
and that's the thing. The fortunate part about this whole situation is that they did have boot camp rooms or practice rooms in the hotel. Every team had an assigned location that they could go into and deathmatch, scrim other teams, whatever the like. And I imagine a lot of them put emphasis on DMing, not so much with the AK, but with those M4s to get used to them. Again, though, T-sides in specific have looked really strong. I've seen a lot of T-side opping this week. We've seen the return of Simple, who's a man who can do that. A lot of X factors in this way of teams with changed rosters, Hiko coming in, et cetera, et cetera. What have we seen in terms of improvement? Which team has surprised you the most, I guess, Una?
I think it has to be Liquid, like I said. They've improved the most, definitely. A team that took a whopping 1 to 3 rounds against top teams earlier to actually really battling with these teams and actually looking like a team, you could say, compared to before, is a huge difference. So they've actually been the most impressive team.
Yeah, for me actually, Liquid by and large have made the biggest strides because a lot of focus has been on them. When they first came to Europe, it was actually the same timing as Immunity actually, and pretty close to Renegades as well. We had all these teams going, with their new brands straight into Europe for these big tournaments. We had that Faceit Stage 2 LAN, and it was a really, really horrible performance from them, and they felt that. Then they went on to Gfinity. It was another really horrible performance, and a lot of it was down to the fact that they weren't team play. Their team play was really off, basically. They were playing way too individual. There was this really key moment that really epitomized this. I think it was like a Mirage game, and they had the bomb down on B, and Crims just walked in and 1 versus 4'd them. And that should be literally impossible in professional Counter-Strike to actually achieve that. And there was like a camera shot of Crims' face afterwards where he was just like, what just happened? He was laughing at that, basically.
Yeah, and I remember for Flaren, I was actually casting with him, and for Flaren, I won't call it unprofessional in this situation because of how abysmal it was, but actually just started laughing mid-cast about that situation. I think that summed it up perfectly. It may have actually been beneficial because when Liquid watch it back, they'll go, all right, this has to change. It was that obvious.
Well, if you don't laugh about it, you can only cry about it because that's how awful it was.
Basically. I cry every time.
And now what we saw was incredible team play from them on some of these
especially in those situations.
Yeah, exactly. So they've definitely timed up a lot. This team works really hard. That's really obvious, and it's kind of nice to see that that's paid off. So for me, they've made the biggest strides.
All 4 teams that qualified so far out of these qualifiers have played in the major, and the last major in specific. So Titan, CLG, Cloud9, and of course Mouse Sports. Today we have 4 teams who haven't. Obviously, Hellraisers, Immunity has played, so Dignitas, Liquid, and Copenhagen Wolves. Of those 4 teams, which 4 do you think has the best chance to make it through finally to this major?
Liquid, definitely, I think.
Over Renegades?
Yeah, over Renegades, simply because the way Renegades, how they felt and everything, their mood, how
body language was awful at Renegades. I don't think I've ever seen more demoralized Bungie that we've seen this week. It's just like, we could just show a lot of clips of him looking like, I don't want to be here, I don't want to play. It seems like, I don't know if it's just too much Counter-Strike, what is it, but there's something not right.
I had the quote that Semler ultimately tweeted, and it was a shot mid-game after they'd lost a round where it was like Sponge owed a mobster money, and if he lost this game, he wasn't going to be able to pay the bookie, so he was like so scared and petrified about what was going on. Even after a victory they had, it was mentioned on the couch, the casting couch. The couch is gone. I missed the couch already. We have to stand now. But we saw them talking a lot about the previous map, Train, when they should have just mentally reset, let it go, move forward into the next map. And during that time as well, Sponge, who's normally the spiritual leader, the motivator on the team, the strat caller, was sitting in his chair while the other players and the manager were all grouped together. So he was, again, removed from the situation there. It's going to be interesting how that plays into it. Any chances for teams like Copenhagen Wolves, who are a newer roster, made it out of groups in London, perhaps seeing more from them throughout the week? I think we've seen some strides. Twist has been playing very well. Yakem as well. Any chance that they can make it through?
Yeah, exactly. You put the guys out who need to be the big guns there. Jacob and Twist, if they play really well, then anything's possible. For them, it was a case of them starting out really cold. They were, you could just tell that they were too nervous. The way they were acting and playing in situations was just, super nervous. Like they couldn't make rational decisions when they should have played passively or aggressively, or not being able to communicate in the right manner. But then going into the second match, they seem more relaxed as the game progressed. So if we see more of that, yeah, there is a possibility.
I think Flipside have a really nice degree of experience at this point, and considering how tight they tend to play as a team, especially now Davkos is on the lineup, and you've got a super motivated Markov as well. Like they generally seem. I really feel like Flipside. This is a great situation for them as a team. So I would actually be quite surprised if their consistency doesn't play out over this best of 3, because we know that the Copenhagen Wolves can be really explosive. Absolutely, they've got some amazing skill on their side, but I think the consistency from Flipside, the rehearsal, the drills, I think we'll really see that here today.
Also, I talked to Rubino. He said we had issues with the slow pace that Flipside throws at them. So that's what they need to figure out, how to play against that.
All right, well, there's lots of other stories to talk about as well. Simple, not with Flipside, but here with Hellraisers. Could also make it through to the first major. There's lots of people that would be excited about him. But we're going to stop talking about it for now because we've got to get into our first matchup. We'll send it to the stage where one of the long-lost Jonas brothers waits to introduce both teams.
He's done it again. He's done it again. Thank you for an amazing throw, Matt. Ladies and gentlemen, how you doing? Yeah, so we're still filling out here in the arena, but we've got some awesome people in the crowd at the front and at the back, so it's definitely going to heat up and be an amazing day. So, welcome to the final day of DreamHack Stockholm. We've had an absolutely amazing week of Counter-Strike, like my friends on the desk said. We've had some brilliant storylines. We've seen some ups, some downs, and it's all going to culminate today. 8 teams remain, but only 4 can make it through. Through, of course, to the major DreamHack Cluj-Napoca, which is happening at the end of October, leading in to the start of November. Who's ready for some Counter-Strike? Yeah? All right, how about we get us started? Ladies and gentlemen, can you please welcome to the stage Team Dignitas and Team Immunity? Now, how about we introduce these players, starting with Dignitas, the man, the myth, the pimp. Awesome guy. Now the new blood to the team, but certainly someone who is not new blood to Counter-Strike, Schneider. Up next is MSL. And I've made this joke before, but I've got to make it again. You know what I'm going to say, brother. Your hair is amazing, and you are AZ. And then lastly, we have the baby of the bunch, 17 years old, but an absolute monster nonetheless. It is Kiebi. Now, moving on to the Australians. First off, we have Imagine. And then secondly, someone who is touted as one of the top talents from the Oceania region, and that is Ricky. Up next is the captain. Look at him, he's focused. It is Sniper. They mean business, they've come to win. And now he specifically made sure that I repeat what I said during rehearsal. It's the Beast, James. And lastly, but surely not least, it is you, Stillo. I got it right this time. I got it right. There we go. Could I please have Pimp and Sniper come over? We'll have a quick little chat before this match. We've got a few questions. Pimp, if you could come over. All right, thank you, guys. Okay, I'm going to start with Dig. Thoughts on this rematch?
Yeah, I think we're going to win it. I hope we're going to win it, and this time we're going to qualify for the major.
And what about you guys? Because obviously, earlier in the competition, you did fall to Dignitas, and now it's a chance at redemption.
Yep.
Okay, well, okay, I'll move back to Dig. I'm sure you've got some thoughts. So, how do you plan to repeat this performance? You know, is it going in with the same tactics? Are you going to switch some things up so that you're more, you know, unpredictable?
Well, first of all, we're not playing the same maps this time. We're not going to play any of the maps today, I think. Third map is Inferno, but I don't think it will come to that. So hopefully it will be 2 new maps, and we're going to win both of them. And we don't have anything specifically planned. We just plan to win and qualify for the major.
All right, and do you plan... I'm being careful here in case I get one-word answered again. But are you planning on changing anything to try to change the outcome of this match?
Yeah, well, we tried to change up the veto. Dignitas have called our bluff and chosen train straight up. So we're just going to go out there and give it our best shot. If it comes to a second map, we know Dignitas are good on the map, but I don't think they have any right to be supremely cocky. Hope we can get to the third map and see what happens there.
I like that. It's fighting talk. Just the last question for both of you. Now, Dignitas are known, unfortunately, for a bit of inconsistency. What's different this time that's going to bring you guys to the major?
Well, Snyder is a major difference from the last 2 times. So he's definitely like improved us both in game and out the game. So I hope that this time it will be something different. Like we have failed the past couple of times. Like we should have qualified last time. We should have qualified the time before. But somehow we managed to fail. And this time we hope that we can actually play to our potential and win and qualify without being disrespectful to Immunity. I think that we are a team that should qualify for every major out there. So I hope we can do it though.
Awesome. And then lastly, you guys did actually qualify for the last major, so you have that experience. Is that an edge, or are you going to, you know, not let it get to your head?
Yeah, I mean, we're not really notorious for choking, so we're just going to go out there and try our best. All due respect to them, they are a good team, and if they win, then they definitely do deserve to go through. It's not about us, it's about just whoever wins and plays the best on the day.
Everybody? That's it for these guys. If you could shake your hands, head back to your stations. We are going to get this match started, and I think throw it back to the guys on the desk.
Thank you so much, Paula. That was a brilliantly subtle interview. I like that he called out Dignitas can't be cocky, but then we're not notorious for choking. That couldn't have been more clear. But it was interesting when we started this off. We'll get to Immunity in a second because they, like Renegades, had to actually fight for survival on day one. Both Australians actually had to play in the decider match, the elimination match, rather than the winner's bracket. But we'll start with Dignitas. They were the team, and when I asked the question to you guys before we went to this stage about which team do you think is most likely to get into the major that wasn't there last time, I expected this to be your answer. I expected you guys to go toward Dignitas. Schneider's obviously come into the lineup. He's the new wild card, but London serves as great practice to them with him on board. I'll start with you, Jonah. What do we expect to see from them today?
I do expect them to win. It's just going to come down to the fact that Immunity, first time out, they made themselves situations where they could have won rounds, like 3-3s and such, but they made so many mistakes in those situations. So if you give that opportunity to these players, they're just going to prevail. They're going to win. And I do think they're going to be qualifying for the major.
Yeah, straight out. And for me, it's Dignitas are a team that are really phenomenal right now. We saw DreamHack London. They had some really great results. They fought against TSM, but the only real problem they had was Mirage. Their overpass game was really strong, which definitely helps them in this situation against Immunity, who love to play that map and have been preparing it as well. So that's a big issue for Immunity. But Dignitas, it used to also be a thing. You know, we had AZ. He was a newer player, you know, like a year ago, and he didn't have the experience. Now all these guys have a lot of experience. It's just Kirby really who doesn't have a lot of experience. But that guy is really geared up to be in this position now to have a huge tournament. And with like players like Pimp behind him, Pimp goes nuts on the stages like this. This is when he really plays his best. And that guy's is insanely good.
That stage comment you made is actually really important as well. Obviously, Schneider's playing in front of a home crowd. He's the one of the only Swedish players playing today because obviously Nip and Fnatic, they're already among the gods in Cluj. But Immunity, this will be their first time in a big arena. Usually all the times they're in Europe, whether it's qualifying stages or Face It, have been small studio events without the large audience. That may play a factor. Other interesting thing, and I want to get your thoughts on this, YNK, we don't know the whole map veto yet. We haven't seen it. Obviously, it's done. They took a gamble and tried to change it up, and their bluff was called. So Dignitas took Train, and in the interview, it almost seemed like Immunity were conceding defeat. They said, if we can get it to map 3. Is that the mentality you should have?
Well, I mean, on one side, no, but on the other hand, you're probably realistic about your chances when you see the map pool. Yona pointed it out, like it's a very important point that as the winning team, going into a rematch, you always want to change the map pool because, you know, the losing team is going to prepare for those maps, specifically going to spend the most time preparing for it, and that way you can, like, be in a favorable position. Like, I even the first day when we had this group, I said that, like, Immunity is my pick for an upset in this whole qualifier. And I said that, like, they're going to play Dignitas twice, they're going to lose once and beat them once. So they lost the first time. I really think that, like, as you guys have pointed out, that they had, in their first match against Dignitas, they had a lot of individual mistakes, misplays, over-aggressive moves, you know, not playing together, like, just picking by himself, not getting flashed in, you know, and basically, you know, the most basic stuff. And it looked like it was nerves or something. They looked much better in their second game.
Overplaying the situations, you could say.
They looked much better in their second game. And now they had a couple of days, you know, to calm down, to talk about everything, to prepare a bit better. And if they can, like, show up, if they if they can play, like, because we saw them at the major, they were, like, really close to beating Kinguin as well. So I think they can at least put up a good fight.
All right, well, we've got the vetoes now as well. So as we already knew, Train is where we start. Immunity, they took out Cash to begin with. This was probably part of that bluff strategy they were going for. And of course, Dignitas, they took out Dust 2. Actually, I've got that out of order because it's so far away from me. Excuse me. Overpass went out first from Immunity. Dust 2 was followed up. Then Train comes in, followed by Mirage, Inferno if needed. And Immunity already felt confident saying if they could go to map 3, they could take this.
This is an interesting veto, to be honest with you.
Well, I'm actually not too surprised because Keish, as the guys from Straya call it, Keish, they got 16-5 against Dignitas in a first time around. Even though it is a map that they love to play, I guess they probably looked over the demo and they probably couldn't find any good solutions there and didn't want to risk it. I actually think this veto works out really, really well for Immunity because Mirage is a map that typically they've had very strong results on, especially at G-Finities and stuff. They've done very well on LAN in this map, so they're going to have comfort. They feel great there. Train is one they've been preparing, and the reason why it's a bit of a bluff is because they have been trying to make it that map that they can kind of surprise people on. And Dignitas, and also they noticed about, I think they were looking at Dignitas and noticed that Dignitas don't really play this map so much, but recently they have started to. So I think that's kind of what they were going for. So this, I think, could be best case here for Immunity.
But then again, Mirage is Dignitas' best map as well. So I think it's just going to be coming down to the fact that Dignitas is the better team, and if they get the map that they like to play, it's always going to be a problem. Train, that, however, still a green map. We keep going on about it. There's a lot of things that are still unknown, I guess. A bit of randomness. We don't still even know sort of like how balanced or unbalanced it is. So I think that's going to be the surprise factor there.
Well, this is the thing, and that means Mirage does become the key to the map if they've already conceded it. And like you're saying, Dignitas are also comfortable on it. So is it going to be 2-0 or is it going to be 3-map decider? Up in the air. Other interesting thing, I'm going to shift gears a little bit because we've got a lot to cover, is the head-to-head. We heard Pimp say that obviously he thought, Imagine, was it Imagine? He said, no, Sniper, was one of the most improved players for Immunity. But the aspect I want to look at is because they've gotten rid of Nico, Pimp, who we often look at as a strong rifler, is back to the AWP, which he hasn't played in a few years. He seems convinced he can get back to the level where he's comfortable and confident and can make a difference, but he's going to be going against a guy like Ricky, who's been very good at the last major.
Okay.
Go
ahead. All right. So
take it away, Dan.
All right. So the thing with this for me is that Pimp is incredibly smart and very, very versatile, and his AWPing is fantastic. He's shown us this. So I actually don't have any. There's no surprises to me that he's going to have a good performance. The really big difference is what he has behind him here, because I don't think Pimp has nearly as much pressure on him than Ricky does. Because pound for pound, skill-wise, Dignitas are just through the roof. And I mean, Ricky, as you said, for him to actually have a big impact, he's actually going to have to go nuts this game. If we don't see a crazy Ricky, I don't think Immunity can actually do this.
I also like to point out one thing, that it's good for a team to have an offer in a way that, okay, let's say you play a map like Mirage, and if you are playing T-side and you know that the opposing team don't top, like they don't have an offer, it allows you to like do so many more things. Like now you see people smoking top mid every round or smoking window because they're afraid of that top. They know it's going to be somewhere around there. If you know that there's not going to be an op, you can like do it with much less resources and everything, and it allows you to do a lot more things on your T side.
In my opinion, it's going to come down to Immunity playing CT well, because last time around, actually their T sides were pretty good. Their executes were good. James was doing a lot of work, being the entry guy, getting a lot of double kills left and right and center. But then the problems were on CT side. That's where they got really nervous. We spoke about them not being able to close out rounds. A lot of them came down to like 3-on-3 situations. You had an Inferno as an example. You had 2 guys on A, 1 in B, and the guy playing in B, instead of playing passively back to side, making sure he's wasting as much time as possible on the terrorist. If they do attack that site, he pushed Banana and died instantly, lost that bomb site and lost the round. So it's that kind of little things that they need to be able to fix to have an opportunity to win this match.
Definitely. It looked to me like Immunity has problems when Dignitas went for those maybe a bit more fast-paced rounds, a bit more loose rounds that are more chaotic. It seems to me that they're like much more relaxed, like when opponents go for like set strats, because I guess that's probably what they're used to back in their region when they play against. So it's going to be interesting, especially on Train and Mirage, if they have to face outer rushes from Dignitas, how they're going to cope with that. On Mirage with that mid control and the 3-pronged attack and the picking and prodding, that's going to be real. That's going to be the most important thing they have to handle in order to win this.
Yeah, that mid control you're talking about, Mirage, is actually a really amazing thing when it comes to teams that MSL leads, because what we'll probably see in this game is that Dignitas will position MSL in Connector, and he's incredibly good at playing that position. And when you take Connector away from the CTs, you take away so much information from them, and they have no idea what's going on. And that's a really, really hard situation to deal with. You're under a lot of pressure, and Dignitas are really good at building rounds from very forward mid-control, because this is something that a lot of teams struggle with. It's, okay, sure, we can throw the smokes, and as we're saying, we can shut down the AWPers, like, okay, we can get that smoke in CPL, but then you've got to get the extra step. How do you team play with flashes and smokes to aggressively take Connector, aggressively take the ladder room as well, away from short, and then build around from that? Dignitas are experts in this, and if there is indeed that shaky CT side, that we could see from Immunity, then Dignitas are primes to be able to deal with this. But that said, Dignitas did have a very... The map that they got crushed on versus TSM was actually on Mirage. I think it was 16-5 or something. So that's the resource that perhaps Immunity could look to. I know you can't
TSM is
replicate
a much
TSM,
different Mirage team.
But maybe there's a trick or two up their sleeves that TSM discovered that they can maybe exploit. We'll see.
Of course, we're going to get into the match in just a few moments, so we can actually stop talking and start watching and let it play out for itself. But one of the other aspects, like you were saying, is that mid-control. Things have changed a little bit.
I'm sorry
You're pointing. You're keen to interrupt.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Matt, but the guy we see behind Schneider, Zonic, we already mentioned it when they were playing the group. This is the first time I actually see him behind the team at their events. I think he's been coaching them for some time, but like being here with the team, I think that's gonna...
Anders is already pumped up about Zonic being back in the scene.
Anders is extremely happy about this as well. Yeah, so I think the choking problem that they're known for, I think that Zonic is going to be a big factor, for them in overcoming that.
Yeah, he understands the psychology. Obviously, he's not played CSGO as much, so technical side of things, he's not going to be able to pinpoint maybe as specifically as you could think, but there's a lot of psychological factors into this game. It's a lot about self-confidence, and that's the type of things that he'll definitely be bringing into the Dignitas.
And not only that, one of the issues that Dignitas have is obviously closing out games mentally. That becomes straining, and therefore Zonic can contribute in that matter. Other thing I want to see is if the continued smoke play on the catwalk, taking window by ladder rather than the boost, comes into effect. We've seen that more and more commonly, but the life is now live. We are about to begin the match, and of course that means handing it over to our casters. It's going to be a tri-cast. We've got Anders, Vince, and of course Natu. You're going to be joining them as well. It's going to be an intense match, We'll see you afterward.